Welcome to our reflection on the Gospel of the Feast of the Epiphany. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that it will be a fruitful time as you reflect with us on the Gospel and make some resolutions that will bring you closer to the Lord in your life. So I invite you now to listen to the Gospel. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star, as they had seen it at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another route. What we have here is sort of event that takes place when a royal child is born, right? That other people come and offer gifts and things like this. So basically we're celebrating here Christ as King. And the thing that struck me is that here in chapter 2, Matthew is talking about Jesus as King, and of course at the end of the Gospel on the cross is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. So that I feel there's an inclusion there in the Gospel. I think the important issue that Matthew is putting forward is the contrast between Herod and the kings. Or I say kings, but they're not kings. It doesn't say they're kings, they're wise men. And the point is that it's the Gentiles, because coming from the east, they would be seen as the Gentiles. They are the ones who pay homage to Jesus, and Herod is the one who pretends he wants to, but doesn't really bring that about. So it's that contrast, I think, that is the main emphasis. It's a Gentile emphasis, and the Gentile and the Herod thing, and this is around the coming of Jesus and the rejection of Jesus and the acceptance of Jesus, all of which are key themes. One of the things that struck me here was how similar this is to the birth of Moses. That very often you find that in the New Testament, by putting a scene against another scene, it gives a meaning to the scene. I often used to say, if you say, and a cricketer says like Don Bradman, it just doesn't say he's good, but in the Bradman context, it makes it much more impressive. And I think that's what's happening here, because the persecution that Herod's going to bring in was the persecution that Pharaoh did, killing all the male children, and Moses was rescued from that. So I think that Matthew is concerned with the idea of Jesus as the new Moses. It'll come up in other sections that at this time the Christians and the Jews were having an identity crisis. The Jews had lost the temple, they had to sort of reorganise their faith, and the Christians wondered whether they were still Jews and things like that. Now, within all of that, Matthew is the one that keeps saying, let us not forget our Jewish roots, that he is the one. And I read some figures the other day that said there were 54 quotes from the Old Testament and 202 allusions in the Gospel. So I think that's the point that comes through here, that it's not just the story of the birth, but it's situating the birth against the birth of Moses and the whole scene there. And as a result, it's the whole of the mystery encapsulated, that Jesus has come. He is the King. His own people do not accept him, and the Gentiles are open to accepting him.
Yeah. I found, on listening very carefully, a whole new world opened up about these, what we call the wise men. Because whenever I hear this scripture, I think of first year university with T.S. Eliot's poem, The Journey of the Magi, and I didn't understand that at all. And it's taken me good 50 years to just get a little insight here into this, to me, the contrast between the vulnerable, tiny babe with the young mother in a stable, and these three kings travelling across the Orient. Where was that? I'm not sure. That and following a star. So to me, it's a great contrast of this cosmic event in the whole of history, and the reality was it was to this tiny baby. But the other thing I can't help saying, the wise men, I thought they were wise because they were obviously astrologers or some way of knowing that this star was important in the cosmos. But I thought, they were wise because they listened to that dream. Because from the very outset here, this little vulnerable baby is at the point of being murdered. Like that's the undertone of this. It's not a genteel family story. It's a cosmic event, and underneath that is also the potential of not wanting to hear, not wanting to welcome, that he's vulnerable, in a way from the kingdom in the land. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a bit gobsmacked by it too. I was thinking it's the stuff of a good movie,
yes,
in this. And what came to me, which I'd never thought before, was I had this sense that they were seeking the truth.
Yes.
And they were led in that search by something mysterious, which I guess is the star that appeared and disappeared and appeared. So led by something mysterious, and the end point of that was worship.
Yeah.
That they came and they worshipped, and in the worshipping, what they did, they gave their treasures, but everything that was themselves, the gift of themselves, to this infant. Yeah, that just struck me, fascinated me.
It's a very rich scene.
Yes.
We invite you now to look at the text again, and just to see what the Lord's saying to you in the text. What is it that you can see in the text that precisely the Lord is speaking to you? We invite you now to listen to the text for a second time.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least amongst the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" When Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared, Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
Whenever this idea of some accepting Jesus and some rejecting Jesus comes up, I always feel, for me, the challenge is, how am I responding to Jesus? And I think we can sort of say, well, obviously we are responding to Jesus. Look at our way of life and things. But basically, it's a question of how much of our heart we give to Jesus. That you can be in the context of an external or religious thing, but really not living it fully, not running to win, as St. Paul would say. So my challenge was just to reflect and say, am I running to win? Am I giving it my very best shot?
And for me, on hearing it read a second time, it was the word joy. Of all the things that they could have been overwhelmed with presenting their great treasures, it was a sense of joy at the crib there with a little baby in the crib. And it ricocheted that the first exhortation, I think, by Pope Francis, the joy of the gospel. So I think I have to seek out my stream of joy and fuel it a little.
I was sitting in the church this morning reflecting on this, and it hit me, who do I really kneel before in terms of worship? And do I have that sense of awe and wonder that I perceive was in the three who came on that journey, following the mysterious and ended in that experience of worship. So just to question myself, how do I recapture something of the awe and wonder of the presence of God that I say is there, the God before whom I kneel in prayer?
Thank you, Virginia and John. We invite you now to draw something from the text that you can translate into your life. Remember, Lectio is a process starting in the scriptures and ending when what is in the scriptures is embodied in your life. So look at the text with that in mind. The Lord said, "Without me you can do nothing," because we're working in the area of the supernatural. So let's pause for a moment and ask the Lord to give us the strength and the courage to put into our life what we have chosen. As we conclude, I'd like to thank you for being with us. I hope that the experience has helped you to encounter Jesus more fully in the text and enable you to take from it something that will help you to live your life in union with the Lord. So we finish now, as we usually do, by reading the opening prayer of the liturgy of the Epiphany.
O God, who on this day revealed your only begotten Son to the nations by the guidance of a star, grant in your mercy that we, who know you already by faith, may be brought to behold the beauty of your sublime glory through Christ our Lord.